All righty, welcome everybody. As always, if you'd like to add your name to the agenda, feel free to. And if you have anything you'd like to discuss, please do update the agenda. As a reminder, we've switched now to a monthly cadence for this meeting, as we've had a little bit of a lower attendance. So I think keeping this at a month should hopefully increase attendance a little bit more, as we'll have a bit more to discuss. We'll start with just some updates to projects. I'll give a little update for Recore V2, and it looks like we also have a blog post to mention. So for Recore V2, as a reminder, this is our rewrite of Recore focused on making it easier to run and easier to scale. There's a lot more updates in previous meetings that go into this a bit more in depth, and some links to some of our design docs if you're curious to learn a little bit more. But where we're at, we have releases of the Java and Go clients that support Recore v2, and the Sigstore Python client adds support at head. If you'd like to test against Recore v2, we do have an instance up in staging. One thing I'll mention is that we have a different process for discovering logs than before. Previously, it was a hard-coded URL. Now we have her instance URLs. So we have the signing config that we distribute that includes this list. If you look at previous weeks, it looks very similar, but it was named log 2025-alpha1. In the coming week, we're going to turn that shard down, and this is something that we'll be doing periodically, and production as well, more or less requiring that clients are using the signing config to fetch the current set of log shards. All of our clients will support signing configs. So if you're using a up-to-date Sigstore client, there should be nothing that you have to do. Switching over to a new shard should be seamless and silent. If you'd like to test, there's some instructions of how to test against both a local instance and the instance up in staging that I've linked as well. As for blog posts, I want to highlight that we just published a blog post on our new data set that we worked on. So I and another engineer from Google helped to build a data set on BigQuery that is the entries from Recore. There's been a lot of interest from researchers in trying to determine just certain the facts and whatnot from Recore, but it's always been a bit hard to ingest data from Recore at scale. The BigQuery data set should hopefully make this a lot simpler. Queries in the marketplace listing, if you'd like to give it a try. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me, or we have an email as well that you can contact. I will mention that BigQuery queries can add up a little bit. This is just something that, you know, we're trying to find more indices that we can add to simplify costs a little bit. If you're running into issues there, do let me know. And if you know anyone in academia who's interested in this, there is a fund that's available that you can apply to get some credits for research. Alrighty, well, I guess we can kind of jump into things and keep going through. I see a few topics for discussion. Amir, I guess, did you want to chat first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, thanks for having me, everyone. I'm Amir Montazeri, Managing Director of OSTIF, the Open Source Technology Improvement Fund. We're a nonprofit and that specializes in working with open source projects and communities on security audits and affiliated engagements. And we did some work on Sigstore a couple years ago, and I heard of I had a few conversations that I believe a follow-up audit was there was interest in one, and I was asked to just join this meeting and bring up the topic and yeah, just kind of see if there's anything we could help with in that space.
Yeah, I'll say that I guess there's a few things of interest. Obviously, our changes with Record v2, that's a bit of a big change in our infrastructure. So there's
Mhm.
probably something we can do around code review. Personally, what I would love to see is an infrastructure review. And by the way, Amir, if you want to make any change to the doc, you just need to join the Sigstore dev group that's up here, and then you can edit the doc directly.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
So we have a number of charts that are publicly available for Kubernetes and for Helm. For Kubernetes, Helm, and for Terraform as well. Doing a review of that, and then some of our internal infrastructure configs in one of our private repos, I think could be interesting. The threat model there would more be around preventing malicious insiders. But that is an area that we haven't had a lot of thorough review on. I know when Ostif did the last review, I think it was primarily a code review, because at the time we didn't really have that much infrastructure. It was not really codified in any way. I think it was pre-GA.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. That's very much in line with some of our initial thoughts, given that the project has definitely matured a lot and changed a lot since we reviewed it last. And yeah, we were definitely interested in looking at that, especially with yeah, I'm reading here in my notes, untrusted inputs in cosine, recore, and Fulcio. And we were also thinking about adding some fuzzing harnesses, things like that, adding fuzzing coverage and capability. So yeah, so has there been I believe there has to be process-wise a formal request for funding for an effort. And then I believe the status for y'all was that makes sense to have a little bit of insight as to kind of what some costs would look like, and to have an idea of what to ask for in terms of funding from OpenSSF for an initiative like this. So maybe what I can do then is I will start a document with some of the high-level stuff we had in mind, or some initial thoughts. Obviously, you all know the project best, and would love some feedback and notes, some of the things you had mentioned already, Hayden. And then we can start putting that together in a RFP where we can get some teams to quote to give us an idea of exactly how much an effort would cost that would cover all the things that y'all want to get done. So with that being said, do you have a time frame in mind for this kind of work, or are you working with any kind of deadline or something in mind to have it done by, to announce?
No, there's no deadline that I could think of where we would want this done by.
Okay.
I'll also mention, I think it would be good if you could attend the TSC meeting on the next Thursday as well, to bring this forward to the TSC.
Okay. TSC next.
So this is also on the community calendar.
Okay, yeah, let me make sure I have it added on to my
I can help get you the right information too if you need it, Amir.
Oh, yes, thank you, Stacy. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm forwarding that over.
Sure.
I'm going to be at the Open Source Summit next Thursday, but I think I can make that work. If anything, I'll try and get at least some things on paper for y'all by next Thursday.
Great. I've just left a link here. So this is the community calendar, different than the OpenSSF's community calendar. So that should have a link to the TSC meeting. I will say I don't know who from Sigstore side is going to be at the Open Source Summit, but if you do find anyone, feel free to chat with them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be there and happy to discuss this this collaboration, because it's a really great project and really great work y'all are doing. So it'd be really fun to collaborate again on this.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, thanks for kicking this off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll hopefully see you at that TSC meeting, and then I'll get at least an initial draft over of some ideas and thoughts to start getting the scope down and getting a proposal together.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate the help, and appreciate you letting me participate and bring this up.
Awesome. Stacy, do you want to chat about Open Source Summit?
Yeah, just a reminder that Open Source Summit and OpenSSF Community Day are next week. So Community Day is on Thursday and Open Source Summit is the rest of the week. We will have a booth there. So if anyone from the Sigstore community is going and would like to stop by and give a demo or just chat about Sigstore at our booth, we'd love to have you. I can post the booth schedule in the notes doc too, so that people have it. But otherwise, just a quick mention. That's all from me.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to, I won't be there, but I'm looking forward to seeing some of the talks online afterwards. Alrighty. Well, I guess we can then go to some of the office hour questions. Andrew, what do you want to chat about?
Yeah. So I opened I was trying to add support in chains, Tecton chains, to be able to push attestations and signatures to the OCI registry using the Referrers API. That led me to discover that within Cosign, we don't have uniform treatment handling of utilizing the Referrers API. There is some handling of it across some of the subcommands and none in other subcommands. So I was interested in trying to add that uniform handling within Cosign. I created an issue for it. We were having some discussions in Slack as well. But I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that what we need to figure out is how this type of change might be able to work well with changes around Cosign v3. And especially because in Cosign v3, we're trying to work on simplifying the interface that we maintain. And what in this situation might be, or if there's any kind of dependencies of Cosign, like Tecton chains, would it make more sense to use Sigstore Go directly instead of Cosign? And just kind of figuring out what that story might be.
I think these are all really great questions. And obviously you and I have chatted, and I would love anyone else's opinions on this too. I think in general, and this is one thing we kind of need to describe maybe in a blog post somewhere about our vision for Cosign v3. If you use Cosign as an API now, it's a little rough around the edges. It was never particularly designed to be used as a library. It can be, but there wasn't a lot of when its API was designed, there was not a lot of focus on a well-structured API, more just around usability of it, that it's functional. Sigstore Go was designed to be used exclusively as an API, not for containers, but for just blobs. You're just signing bytes, right? And my recommendation at this point for any client is if you don't need container signing, you should use Sigstore Go if you're writing a Go application. Over time, what I'd like to see is effectively other applications pop up designed for signing specific things. So really those, if you want to sign something like a container, right? The role of Cosign will be to take a container, transform it into bytes, and then feed that to Sigstore Go. Git sign, you could imagine the same thing. Take a git commit, turn it into the canonicalized form, and then send it to Sigstore Go. Something like the model transparency library as well, just that being backed by Sigstore Python. So all of these tools and libraries become a lot smaller, their primary focus is just on canonicalizing whatever you're signing into a byte array that eventually goes into Sigstore Go. Cosign will have obviously the extra role of also being a command line tool. So there'll be a little bit more still in Cosign, but you can imagine that some parts of Cosign will basically just be call up to Sigstore Go to sign a binary, and then some parts will be for container signing as well still. So if Tecton Chains doesn't need container signing, you could just use Sigstore Go directly. I think that would be fine, and you'll get the added benefit of just a reduced dependency tree as well.
And in this example, we do need that container signing aspect.
Okay.
And I know that that's additionally complex because of the whole OCI 1.1 spec and the refers API and backwards compatible and like that being mixed in with changing the bundle format. Like there's a lot of changes kind of swirling around this in the same space. So there's actually, I think that we have multiple sets of tools that leverage Cosign because we depend on that, or we operate on containers, and so we use Cosign for the API to get the attestations, or from like our policy engines, we get those attestations, or with Tecton Chains, creating those attestations and or signatures. And like I have a PR against chains to make it work for using the refers API, but it uses the new protobuf bundle, and I'm not familiar with the change between that. Like I don't know how much of a breaking change that might be for any consumers of chains, for any users of chains, or for any policy engines that matter that are trying to operate on the attestations that chains produces for these images. And so just because like maybe the answer is that there's no breaking changes, but I don't know if we can confidently say that. And because there's no, or because of my uncertainty there, what I feel like we should do is to kind of handhold in a way within Cosign this split between the bundle format or the protobuf format. I don't know what the old one is, legacy, if what is what we can call it. So we have legacy versus protobuf bundle, but then we also have the refers API, backwards compatible, or the actual use of the refers API. So I think, to me, it makes sense to, if Cosign's intention is to bridge the gap for containers, it makes sense to have both of these options kind of available. And then for bundles, or for the protobuf bundle, if we want to default to using the refers API, that's fine. Like that is a decision that we can make. It makes sense since we're doing it in an age when maybe more of these container registries have had time to implement the full refer spec, but still having that option and still having the support of when you're listing attestations or signatures, making sure that you support both formats.
Yeah, so I guess I'll say that one, I think backwards compatibility is very important. So some of this work is a breaking change in that you will need an up-to-date client to be able to verify. So it's unfortunate breaking change here is a bit ambiguous, but it depends on how you're defining a breaking change. Our goal with any future changes in Cosign, at least through like V3, is that we are not breaking the verification path. The sign path may change, and that then would require that you have an up-to-date client if you're producing one of these new bundles. And this would trickle down to those who depend on Cosign as well, right? So from Tecton Chains perspective, if you're producing a Sigstore signature at some point and you don't have an up-to-date client that's verifying that new bundle format, then it would fail. So my goal is that we wouldn't see any of these legacy formats deprecated at this point, just that going forward, we'd only produce the new format. So we would still expect that clients are staying up to date. So that's one thing. And again, this is an area that I think we'd love some more community feedback on as well, if we're moving too quickly or not. One thing I that was unclear on is your goal that we are separating the bundle and the referring API changes, and that the refer API could have either the legacy or the new bundle format. Is that something that you wanted to couple into this?
Yeah, because so like just what you're saying, for verification, you need to ensure that the clients doing the verification have an up-to-date or are more recent. So if we're saying that newer clients can do both verifications, then I want to, in the changes that I'm introducing to Tecton Chains, what I want to make sure that we can do is give the flexibility for anybody deploying chains to say, use the refers API or use the tag convention, use the protobuf bundle or use the legacy bundle, so that the operators of these Tecton Chains deployments can pass that requirement down to any of the consumers of those artifacts that says you need to use this version of Cosign, instead of like right now, if the PR that I have gets merged, we can start using the refers API, but then we immediately require everybody to have a recent version of Cosign for doing the verification.
That makes sense. From my perspective, like, I think what you're saying makes sense. I think the concern is just maintaining more code paths, more divergent code paths, more optionality between different places where metadata gets stored, right? And there has been code up to this point where you could store the legacy bundle format in a referring artifact. So that actually was there. It just was not like a well-supported code path. And I'm not particularly familiar with it. I didn't make any of those changes. An argument for keeping them coupled is that that's the default that we'd like to see going forward. And I don't, besides kind of smoothing over this transition, there's not really an argument to continue to have both those like different code paths supported indefinitely. Again, this is kind of an area where I'd love to get just a bit more community feedback on this. I will definitely say I'm in no way an expert on OCI and referring artifacts. So having somebody who understands this a bit more, if they could speak to it, would be helpful.
Yeah, and in the issue, I put down the subcommands that I think do have the refer support. The ones that generate it, so there's support that I saw in 4 different subcommands: tree, sign, verify, and attach SBOM. So there's not support there for provenance, as far as I could tell, only for the SBOM attachment and then the signature.
Okay.
Which like felt odd to me. And the most recent one that had OCI support added that I saw was Cosign tree. That added, so there's the, but that added just the subcommand. And so like what I understand what you're saying about not wanting to have to maintain as much, but like, is it easier to just implement this forking or this support directly in each of the subcommands? Sure, because you don't have to create an abstraction of how do you handle it in a consistent way. But that becomes more of a maintenance challenge, and you have to make sure that, oh, we're fixing this issue in tree where we have to go fix it in verify, or we're fixing in verify where we have to fix it in tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just also going to add one other thing here that's worth mentioning is as part of V3, we did want to review all of the commands that are available. And so there's sort of an open question. Again, this is really where I need some community input on, are all the current commands useful? Or if we move to a world where we have everything stored in referring artifacts, could we use other tooling that exists rather than couple it in cosign? And I know we've heard some feedback that people like that cosign is a catch-all tool, that it's a Swiss Army knife and it can fully interact with the registries. But again, if one of our goals is reducing maintenance and duplication, maybe we recommend that you're using Oros tooling, or maybe some of this gets built into something like Crane.
Yeah, and like Oros, I think that Oros understands the, I don't know if it's the media type or the artifact type for attestations, but it doesn't understand it for the signature. And so when I was doing this experimentation on adding support to chains, I was verifying actually with Oros, because I didn't realize that the cosign binary had to be updated, and the one that I had wasn't updated. And I could see when I used Oros Discover to see all the referring artifacts, I saw them, and there's some unknown type for the signature, and I discovered that that's just not a well-known format. So like I definitely understand what you're saying about the ecosystem. It like, to me, it makes sense that if we're trying to say cosign is here to be the interface layer between Sigstore and containers, that there is a benefit to being able to support these different operations. To, for example, I mean, as a simple one, tree, to be able to see all of them, to be able to verify, to be able to download these various different artifacts, because then you don't have to have that additional logic in other places, which depend on the protobuf bundle or whatnot.
Yeah. So I guess what would be most helpful at this point? I guess at this point it's make a little bit of noise and try to get a bit more community input on this.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. And I don't know if you saw, and part of the reason that I want to do this as well is I don't know if you saw the new attestation predicate PR I created for in Sigstore, where I was I was talking with Tom Hennon, another maintainer for Salsa, about how we use the verification summary attestations, and we have a lot of information there that we don't need. And so what I was trying to propose is using to create your verification summary attestation and generating provenance for that verification summary attestation. But that's not something that's possible if you do the backwards compatible tag method, because if you have the tag, it wraps all those attestations into a single artifact that's pushed, and so you can't generate an additional attestation for a single blob. But so if you use the referrers API, it keeps up each of them separate, and so you should be able to generate provenance for a specific attestation that's generated. So before merging that tooling, or before merging that change, I feel like we should really make sure that tooling supports that model.
Yeah,
which it does if you use the bundle format, but not everybody uses the bundle format.
All right. Well, I can take another pass over this issue as well. And I think Zach and I and you and I think anyone else interested in kind of the direction of cosign should chat a little bit more about how we do this in a well-structured approach.
Yeah, and if I know it's hard to schedule times, if it would be beneficial for you, myself, and Zach, or anybody else to have a one-off call, I'm happy to set that up.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, Arthur, do you want to chat about X509?
Sure. I posted about this in Slack yesterday, and I think I brought it up at the last client meeting as well, just to like put out some feelers and brainstorm how we might be able to solve this. So in the process of trying to create a post-quantum crypto capable plugin with Circle, my colleague Kevin discovered that there is a blocker with Go Standards Crypto X509 specifically. They accept object IDs for classical crypto, and there isn't like a lot of flexibility with having other OIDs. They seem to imply that you can sign things with other OIDs but not verify. So how to work around this issue could end up getting complicated. And we've come up with a couple possibilities. One could be having something in Sigstore that calls to Cloudflare's Go fork that allows other OIDs specifically for PQC. Or we could write custom verifier structures, or maybe there's a different approach. I'm kind of just throwing this out here to see what people think the best way to tackle this would be. Ideally, we want to be not disruptive as possible to Sigstore's code base, and try and contain what we can within the plugins that we're building. I'm just going to open the floor and see what other people's thoughts are.
Well, I'll just mention that if you want to get a perspective from someone else who had to go through this, the certificate transparency Go implementation maintains its own X509 fork, because there's just some idiosyncrasies of CT verification where they needed to maintain their own fork. My understanding is it's a non-trivial amount of work to do that, but it might also be the simplest approach in the short term. If you can try to just plug in your own X509 implementation into Fulcio's code base, recompile Fulcio, see if it works. I think what's tricky is you kind of need support across, I guess it's probably just cosign and Fulcio. I guess you need it in Recore 2 for some of the verification, because I'm trying to remember if it verifies the certificate or not. You might have to dig into this a little bit.
Because like we're also seeing X509 and Sigstore. So
well, that I think you'll largely bypass because of the KMS plugin, the way you've implemented verification. I think that would be okay. Yeah, I'm remembering this as an issue we ran into, not because of PQ, but because we were looking at supporting ED25519, the pre-hash variant. There was no standard OID for that at the time. We couldn't figure out an easy way to plug that in. So you'll just see certificates that get generated that sort of incorrectly state the signing algorithm of the key, which is fine for ED25519, but not for totally different algorithms that you'd have in PQ. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if there's a straightforward answer for how to deal with this. Beyond asking the Go maintainers if they have any suggestions. Their philosophy is generally support WebPKI almost exclusively in the X509 code base, but doesn't mean they wouldn't be open to certain API changes around some flexibility for signing verification. Again, I don't want to speak for them. I'm not sure if they'd be open to those types of changes. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky.
Indeed. So I have a couple thoughts there. One is that, one option is to, like you said, contact the Golang maintainers, wait until they support it. It probably won't be anytime soon. I imagine it would be more than a year from now because it wouldn't be landing in 1.24. And it does kind of also leave us with the issue of crypto agility into the future because, maybe they'll accommodate MLDSA, but if there has to be another switch in the future to a different algorithm, then we kind of end up stuck in the same way. And we have really enjoyed how crypto agile Cloudflare has been. I also have, they're a large organization, so ones who are maintaining this experimental fork for their own purposes. So kind of outsourcing it to their fork might reduce some of the burden on us since they've already done the work for making it happen. Obviously, I did see that about the certificate transparency stuff in Sigstore's code as well. I guess I just wasn't really sure how the community would feel about having some way to use Cloudflare's library inside, like with cosign, so that we could accomplish the post-quantum signing, or if maybe there's some way around it entirely so we don't have to mess with it too much. I don't know.
I think the bar for switching out the X509 library to Cloudflare's fork would be seeing that Cloudflare is actively maintaining this, because while we're not using cutting edge features from the X509 library, we wouldn't really want like significant divergence. So I don't know what their strategy is for keeping it up to date, if at all. I know that for certificate transparency's fork, just keeping it up to date was a burden, and I think it did lag a few versions behind Go. Again, we're not using any of the latest features, so it's kind of fine. But I don't know what bug fixes or particularly performance improvements that they include. I wouldn't want to lag too far behind.
Yeah, understood. I do think that I'm wondering if there might be a way to only call functions from Cloudflare's library if working with an OID that Go Crypto doesn't recognize.
Well, what you could do, depending on, again, if we're sort of in the testing phase right now, I mean, and even in like a production environment, if you're deploying your own, you could have it compile based on the tag that you set. So you could have a build tag PQ, right, that would use Cloudflare's variant instead, much like how FIPS compliance before they built in FIPS compliance into Go was done.
Okay, so you're saying that when we build a cosign binary locally or whatever, we have a flag that would allow you to use Cloudflare's library.
Yes, and I think I'll put on my maintainer hat. I feel like I'd be a bit more comfortable with that being in upstream, and we would build two binaries. I think that's fine. That signals a bit more clearly that these are binaries for a different use case. And even if we don't end up building that in upstream, at least there's the capability for others who want to go do that.
Yeah, that sounds like it might be a fine option to me. Kevin, you're the one who discovered this bug. Do you have anything else to add on this?
Sorry, I'm a bit hoarse at the moment. The only thing that I would add is that we tried the KMS plugin approach, and that was where we hit the OID issue. When we were trying to create the keys, it then ended up going back into X509 with it regenerating the key structures. And one of the other options that we came across last week, we discovered that there is I believe it's an ITU spec, which allows you to embed additional signatures within the X509 structure. So it's possible that we could have that as a way of allowing the base certificates to work the signatures to work while we use the additional signature approach for PQC. So there seem to be quite a few different options on the table at the moment, and we're slowly going through them to test them and see what the viability of them is.
Okay. I think that's all I had to say on the matter, unless anyone else has any thoughts.
I think I'll say, like with Andrew's, just make a little noise in the community if you're looking for any more feedback on this as well.
Yeah, I'll probably make an associated GitHub issue. Maybe a cosign, I think would be appropriate. See what people say.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thank you.
All righty. Well, thanks everybody for the great discussion today. As always, if you have any questions, hop on Slack, come say hi. Otherwise, again, as a reminder, we'll be doing this monthly, so we'll see everyone again in a month from now. Have a good one.
Thanks for sharing, Hayden.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.